Why is it that our relationships sometimes can only go so deep? Why is it that we can only have a certain level of conversation or a certain level of emotional awareness within our relationships? And how do we access that place within us that allows us to go deeper so that we can have those fulfilling relationships that we are looking for? Today on the podcast, I have a guest that I'm just so excited and so honored to have on the show. His name is Topaz Adizes, and he's an Emmy Award-winning writer, director, and experienced design architect. His works have been selected to Cannes, Sundance, IDFA, and South by Southwest. He's been featured in New Yorker magazine, Vanity Fair, and the New York Times, and has garnered an Emmy for new approaches to documentary and 2 World Press Photo Awards for immersive storytelling and interactive documentary. He's currently the founder and executive director of the experience design studio, The Skin Deep, which, if you're familiar with his work, you will know and love and understand exactly how powerful his work truly is. We also talk about his new book, The 12 Questions for Love, and he shares some insights with us on how to make your relationships way more fulfilling and also maybe how to know when it's time to just simply walk away. You are going to love our conversation today. I gained so much from this short time together, and I swear I could have talked to him for hours and hours and hours. So I know that this is going to be a powerful one for you as well. And before we get into our conversation, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, especially if you're new to the podcast. I would love to have you in our little Happiness Happens community where we're continuously expanding and pushing the boundaries in what it means to be happy in our life and how to create more fulfillment, more joy, and access that place within us that can feel a little far away. Let's get into this conversation with Topaz. Topaz, thank you very much for joining me on the Happiness Happens podcast today. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm going to start off this conversation the way that I do every other conversation because I'm so curious to know, especially given all the work that you've done, what does happiness mean to you?
Yeah. So I've listened to some of your other podcasts, so I was prepped for this, and I've been thinking about that because I think it's a good question, not to take it for granted, this word that is thrown around so much, right? For me, what comes up is a levity of a moment, a light moment. What I mean by levity is like it's elevated above the normal kind of experience, and it could be just slightly elevated, but a moment that is connected to you acknowledging what's happening and appreciating it, having gratitude for it. You know, whether it's a sunset, whether it's a joke, whether it's a hummingbird that flies in front of you and off, just dropping into a moment, being present to it and acknowledging that you're having a unique experience, a unique moment that is not going to be repeated again, and just sitting in that feeling. That's happiness for me.
I love that. Do you find that you sit in that feeling often? Like, do you find that you're able to look at each moment and really honor it for what it is? Because I think it's one thing to, a lot of the times it's like we say that, right? And we say that
Totally.
we want to be doing that, but it's also a whole other thing to actually do it often. I'm not great at it. I try.
No, absolutely. I don't sit in that all the time, but I try. Especially I have children and I have a 4-year-old and 1-year-old, and they are great teachers at that, or they are great, requiring you to slow down and be in the moment. So I'm grateful for that. But no, I don't think I'm in it all the time. I do notice that there's certain times when I'm in it, which is dinner table conversation is one. I can drop in well there. Since I'm a photographer and filmmaker, I notice the light a lot. So the light helps. I do pay attention to the light, and that gives me when the light's really beautiful or something, that always takes me out of my normal flow and drops me into a moment of, oh, wow, type of thing. And obviously conversations and moments with my kids.
That's beautiful. I love that. I love that. So when we think about all of your whole body of work, we're going to dive into like some of the specifics around it, but I want to understand from you what you've learned about the power of human connection and how it can be, I guess, both used for like, I don't want to say good and bad because I don't think that things are inherently good or bad, but almost where is society lacking in that connection right now, as we speak today, the way that the world is?
Well, great question. I mean, what you practice, you get good at. Where you put your focus is where things grow. I think that in our day-to-day life now, especially with our phones and social media and the way we're engaging, we're not practicing the art of human connection. writing a text message is a form of connection. Yeah. But I think having a conversation is a deeper practice of human connection. If you look at our behaviors on our messaging, it's usually a one-way communication. Someone leaves a voice note for someone else. We're not always in an actual presence of a conversation, a dialogue. We're sending monologues to one another, whether it's a voice recording or a text. Even our digital media, it's monologues being thrown at people, and you're receiving this. And we're not really in conversation. We're not practicing conversation nearly as much or anywhere close to what your previous generations have. They were places to have conversations, i.e., parks and churches and schools. And now we are, because of this incredible fact that, you and I are having this conversation across many miles, and we're able to record this and share this with many people. So there's been incredible technological advancements. On the flip side, it is changing the way we're relating to one another. And we humans are so good at adapting to change that we quickly forget that it used to be a different way. And yes, we use the term love now, but I don't think love felt the same way now as it did 100 years ago or 50 years ago, where it didn't have the same sentiment, didn't have the same investment. In the past, your grandmother used to write to her partner, bleeding the ink from her pen into paper, and then licking that envelope and sending it away and waiting 2 or 3 weeks or a month for a response.
Hmm.
And now we send a text, and if we don't get a response in a minute, we're getting ghosted or whatnot. Just the flow of information is so much faster that the investment of time and energy and focus and presence isn't what it used to be. And I think we shouldn't lose track of that. And I'm not saying that we should change our behavior in the face of technology. We should just be more conscientious of it. And so
Mm-hmm.
the question is, what do you practice?
Mm-hmm.
How do you practice that?
Beautiful. And what's really interesting about that too is, in some ways, it changes the way that we are able to be patient with the person that's in front of us, in my opinion. Because
Totally.
you don't, like you said, you don't hear back from someone, they've ghosted you. Someone does something nice for you, they've love bombed you. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Someone says X, Y, and Z thing, or says something that's on their mind, now they're a narcissist, right? We put all of these words onto people, and some can be true,
Mm-hmm.
and also some can be a really big generalization. And it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like the words that we use matter. How we
Yep.
connect to people in that way really
Mm-hmm.
matters.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, with these monologues and paragraphs of conversation, like you don't have a two-way conversation with that anymore.
We're just not practicing it. And I think, and then where do we learn? Where are we taught that? I mean, in the writing of this book, 12 Questions for Love, which is based
Mm-hmm.
on, as you probably have in the show notes, but 10 years of holding space for the and, holding over 1,200 pairs, having these intimate conversations, and
Mm-hmm.
the learnings of that distilled in the book. And that's where my sharing with you now comes from, is what have I learned from that? And why is it in this book? It's because I'm not sure we learn that anywhere. I don't know if there's a high school class or a university program or some type of course where we learn how to have deeper conversations, cathartic conversations, ones that can catalyze new forms of exploration within your relationship. I think my team and I, we've kind of stumbled into that and practiced that for the last 10 years. And I think that's an interesting observation, is that where do we learn how to have better conversations, and what's the value even of a better conversation? Right. I mean, that I get that too. It's like, why do we even, from my own family members, like, why do we even have to have these deep conversations or like exploratory conversations? I think because there's an incredible amount of nutrients that are surrounding you in the relationships in your life that we
Mm-hmm.
don't explore,
Mm-hmm.
that by exploring it, your experience of being alive is enriched. You feel more vital. You get more energy. Your sense of what it means to be human, what I call humanity, your sense of humanity is amplified. And that gives you a great sense of energy and empowerment and agency. And yet we don't explore those relationships. And what I mean by explore is we don't create the space and ask well-constructed questions to deepen and explore relationships, which in then turn give us these nutrients I'm talking about, this sense of
Mm-hmm.
energy and vitality of what it means to be alive.
Mm-hmm. Two thoughts for you
Yeah.
that come up from
Yeah.
that. The first one is, do you think that everyone can access a place of having conversations like this?
No.
Why?
There's the 5 love languages, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've heard of that, where there's
Mm-hmm.
acts of service and present, quality time, and gifts and conversation, so articulation. So we all can express and have different forms of intimacy. There's different forms. I think that we have, for those who are inclined, and even for those who are not, to practice it. It's not like it's something that's innate in you and you either have the talent or not. It's like riding a bike. You practice, you get better at it. But what is the framework that is offered to us so that we can get better at it? And I call it emotional articulation in the book, which is the ability to articulate the emotions you're feeling. You hear about emotional intelligence, which is understanding how other people are feeling and you're feeling and relating that. But our emotional articulation is the ability to put words to your feelings and share that. And oftentimes in a relationship, maybe there's one person who has a great ability to articulate their emotions, another one who's not. And that's actually maybe why they are attracted to each other, because they complement one another. So it's not like there's no shoulds. Much like you say, there's no better, like right or wrong, because there's no inherent good or bad, like you were saying. I think that there's not the right questions and the wrong questions. There's better, well-constructed ones. There's not the right answer or the wrong answer. It's just more articulate ones or less ones. But we are who we are as humans, and we can allow that to be. So let's create the spaces in which we can explore our beingness.
Mm-hmm. What if we don't have the emotional safety in somebody else to be able to have, like, what if one person wants to have that conversation and the other can't?
Right. So great question. So I think we should just not confuse safety with comfort. Right. I think that, so it's essential in a relationship to have these conversations that you feel safe. You feel like there's a mutual trust, there's a mutual respect. We are on a journey together. I'm not here to destroy you, to manipulate you, to take advantage of you. I'm here for us to walk this path together and for us to both evolve, right? To have that sense. Now, every time on that journey we come across discomfort, that's good. Discomfort is good. That means that there's an opportunity to grow there. If we look at our lives, every time we grow, it's because we've overcome a challenge. We face an anxiety. There's discomfort there. I like to say that the path to growth is lit by your fears. It's lit by your discomfort. Pursue them wherever they appear. So let's not confuse safety with comfort, right? If you feel uncomfortable, that could be a good thing. Now, if you don't feel safe, then it's probably not a good idea to explore vulnerability with someone you don't feel safe with. And that's a whole other conversation, right? Are you in a toxic relationship that this is just not healthy for you? And in that case, then you have this is a different conversation. I think, totally. So I think that's two things. When you feel, ooh, this is really uncomfortable, is this uncomfortable? And am I working with someone that, whether, and it's not just romantic, it could be your parents, it could be your best friend, your friend, but do I feel that there's a mutual trust and respect here? Do we feel that we're on the same page, that we're going to the same spot, and that there's an acknowledgement of that uncomfort, but we are trying to grow through it and we are processing through that? I think that is really important. And then I think in terms of, oftentimes we've found, because we've done a bunch of these productions around the world where we bring these people together, and you can see this on YouTube where it's really powerful. You have two people facing each other and they're asking each other the questions that we've presented them. We've put them on a table and they're asking each other questions, and you see both their faces at the same time. So as a viewer's experience, it's really powerful because you see both faces at the same time. You see them reacting to each other, right? And I'm just saying this to the viewer because it's a great way for them to see our content and see examples of, people, what we're talking about. So usually from doing that, we've done over 1,200 pairs. It's like, usually there's one person who really wants to do it. And there's another person who's dragged there. And that's right. That's dragged there. It's like, okay, okay, I'm doing it.
I made it.
Right. I made it here and I'm doing it because I love you and respect you. And here we go. Okay. So I think that's totally fine. And I think the one who brings the other person there should just let go of the expectation that the conversation needs to be having in any way. And one of our rules is that you don't have to answer any question you don't want, because you have to give the people freedom to be who they are. If there's a requirement for them to answer everything or in a certain way, then they're going to feel cornered. And now they're not actually responding to you by being. They're responding to you with their head. They respond to you in ways of trying to get out of it or to appease you, to make you happy. So how do you create the space for people to enter it where they don't feel cornered? They know they don't have to answer any question they don't want if they don't want to, right? And that they don't have to answer it in a certain way, but just have the experience with me. So what I say to couples that, or any type of relationship where there's one person who doesn't want to have the conversation and one that says, listen, this is really important to me. Could we just schedule a time? And there's no expectation. You don't have to answer any question the whole way through, but let's just have this conversation and see where it goes. Because here's what happens. You sit down with them, you ask a question, maybe they don't answer, but they're thinking about the answer
Hmm.
and you're thinking about the answer. And then maybe they give you a fake answer, one that you know is not really the thing. But then the conversation between both of you in your head is thinking, wow, we're not talking about the thing, right? There is a exploration that happens even if you're not articulating all the words. And what's important is just to be in the space. That's what's important. It's not to get to a certain result or it's about to be in the space, because a lot of it, you're laying the seeds, you're giving it nutrients, and a lot of things will come out after it. And then you get more practice. And the person who's more reserved, usually what happens is that after a few questions, they start opening up and they start actually enjoying it and they get into it. And then afterwards, they're like, let's do that again. That was amazing. We would never have had that conversation if it wasn't for those questions that were posed, or that we didn't create that space with those questions. So then you find that people continue to do it. And then, of course, people just don't want to do it. And I think that speaks to a larger issue in a relationship is this the only thing that your partner does not want to do with you? Is the fact that they don't want to have this dance with you, is that okay with you in your relationship? And the fact that they're not acknowledging your need to want to have this conversation, not that you want them to respond in a certain way, but to even sit in the space with you, then maybe there's other spaces they're also not sitting with you.
Mm-hmm.
And is that enough for you? Is that enough for your journey right now?
Mm-hmm.
And do you stay in it or do you not?
That's a really good question. Everything that you said there is so powerful.
Yeah.
And I think that it lends itself really well to, we need to be able to access those deeper parts within ourselves. And like you said, those questions are prompts to help people develop an awareness around it, because I think awareness can be the hardest piece for a lot of people, because you can even say like, okay, I know I need to have these conversations. I know I need to go there. I don't really know how to go there. But a lot of the times people don't even really have awareness outside of their own reality, right? Do you ever get to hear from people after? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I just say like frankly, sometimes I don't even want to play the game. I don't like sometimes I don't want to have this intense conversation with my wife. But I'll tell you when I know I need to have it. It's that when my wife and I have that tension and we're both something happened and we're both kind of like, when the other one walks in the room and you're like growling at each other. You're just feeling that. Then I know, and my wife know, we're like, okay, how do we create the space for us to bridge this tension? We need to unpack this, because if we don't, that tension is going to kind of become a little bit of a cancer and start growing over time. We need to diffuse that. We need to stretch it. We need to explore that. We need to unearth that. Otherwise, it's going to sit there and can turn into resentment, disappointment, can turn into other things, right? Passive aggression. So, but how we have the conversation is like, boom, I pull out the card games, because we sell, card games of questions, 12 different editions. I just pull that out because it's almost like a lubrication. It's like, I could just pull out a random question and we'll just start talking about it. And what's helpful there is that it's not me who's asking the question of my wife. It's a random card game from a box.
Yes.
And that creates a space for, okay, this question was asked of us, this
it's
random
a neutrality.
question. A neutrality. And it gives us permission to answer, right? How often are we given permission to actually tell somebody what we really think, or to receive from someone what we really think? We don't create spaces for that. And when you have a card game, or in case of this book, you're going to go through these 12 questions. We created a space where you're given permission to give and receive. We create a space of that. And I think that's really important.
I love that. What, out of all the 12 questions, which one is your favorite one to ask? Which one do you think is the most powerful?
Oh, okay. So I don't have a favorite and I know that's so just like what? It's kind of like asking your parents who's a favorite
Who's
kid.
Your favorite kid?
But
it's obviously you, let's be honest. No, I'm just kidding.
Right. Yeah. Oh, so okay. So the most powerful question I can answer is, I think, the one that we place. It's the 7th question, which is because there's an architecture to these 12 questions. And that's, and the beauty of the card games, that they're all random, and the app that, there's a structure to it. In the book, there's a structure to it. In the card game, it's random, because you're pricking them randomly. But there's something to be said about the structure of questions. And the 7th one is the 7th and 8th question are the climax questions. And they're built on these foundations of trust in the first 3 questions. The second 3 questions are about how we deal with conflict in different forms. And then 7 and 8 is really kind of the most vulnerable and courageous questions to ask, and are a crux, I think, of a relationship. The 7th one is, what is the pain in me you wish you could heal, and why? What is the pain in me you wish you could heal, and why? The 8th question is, what is one experience you wish we never had, and why? So 7th one is about the individual, your individual pain, trauma, which by association, like, your partner sees it, feels it. And I don't necessarily think the partner can fix it for you, because I think we can only heal ourselves, but they can help hold a space for you to heal yourself and to work through
I
it.
love those.
Right?
How did you, I know that these questions were created over all of the years that you've done,
Yeah.
but like, did you pinpoint these questions through just what you've learned from other people and realizing like what impacted them? Or are these questions that you just kind of created and then sort of tested them and whatever? Are these things that you lived? Like, how does that come to be?
They came to be through testing, through trying out, trial and error. When we started, we just had some questions. Oh, wow, this one works. This one doesn't. Oh, this one really works. Why do we think this one works? Oh, because the way we framed it? Or was it also the sequence about the question that came before?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's literally 10 years, hours of being in the space, holding the space for conversations and trial and error and seeing what works and what works better, stronger, and what doesn't. And I think that's what's really a great process of writing the book was a distillation further of further breaking down why these questions, why were they working, what makes the and so successful, creating the space for people to have these cathartic conversations, these fun conversations where basically your relationship is not going to be the same. You're going to have, I promise you, if you ask these 12 questions, you create the space and you have this conversation with anyone intimate in your life, your relationship will not be the same after. You will come across new things, beautiful things. You will cherish it in a deeper manner. Your relationship will grow, will shift, will change in a way that is way more engaging, that's also making it way more fulfilling and resilient. And this has come really from trial and error, from practice.
They're not hard to watch in a bad way, but they
Yeah.
are so deeply moving that it's like,
Yeah.
wow, okay, like that's a really powerful.
My team and I, we see it as digital doses of humanity. And I
Yes.
think right now, the algorithms and everything, we know that fear and fury spreads 6, 7 times faster than good news.
Yep.
But what does it shape us as human beings? How does it shape our outlook and our feelings to another and our sense of happiness?
Mm-hmm.
When some of the info you're getting, the things you're eating on the internet, you're digesting is just fueling other sensations other than humanity. And I think that for us, we find it really important that we're going to put out into the world through these digital
Mm-hmm.
channels doses of humanity
I
to
love
reaffirm our sense of connection to one another.
I love that. One book that I came across a long time ago was, I think it was back in like 2018 or something like that, or 2017. I say a long time ago. It's not like it's long
Yeah,
ago, but it's not like that long ago. Anyways, one book though that I came across that I just absolutely loved, and I'm sure you must be familiar, but I'm not 100% sure. But Humans of Humanity, yeah, Humans of New
sure,
York, Humans of New
sure,
York.
sure, sure. The
You
photo
remember
book,
that?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, of
Well,
course.
someone gifted me that book once in a long time, a while ago, and what I loved about it the most was that it was like this ability to connect to people that are so beyond what you just see on a regular day to day. And that's what makes what you do so powerful, is
Hmm.
that it's just your everyday people. You know what I mean? It's just your regular people who are
Totally.
exploring life and conversations with one another. And one thing that came to mind too was as you were talking earlier in our conversation about the fact that and the reality that we can be so disconnected. I also think that the way that our world is going, the way that our humanness is growing, really has created this level of vulnerability that no other generation has really had. We have
Mm.
conversations now that we never would have had
Mm.
years ago. And it's
Hmm.
through work like this that happens, but you change, right? You change the way the world operates by that.
Yeah, it's beautiful you say that. I've seen some conversations of young people in the end that blow me away. That just, I think, oh my God, their ability to articulate their emotions and sit with it and
Yes.
process it is way beyond what I could do at that age and maybe
Mm-hmm.
even now. We're talking at the beginning of the show about technology and how that's shifting us. I think technology on the flip side offers us incredible benefits,
Mm-hmm.
such as who's your community? What's your own self-identity? In the past, your self-identity would come from, the people around you, who you'd meet it. You'd look for other people like you who would resonate, who had similar inclinations, and you talk about it. But you would meet them in church, in work, in the supermarket. It was a physical proximity thing. Now that's gone, and you can find people like you that have similar sensations like you, or inclinations, or ideas, or expressions on the internet. And you're no longer physically based. You could find your best friend on the other side of the world and frankly, right? That gives us so much more room for exploration of who we are and our
Mm-hmm.
identity and how we want to express it, because we are no longer bound to the culture of our own town or community
Mm-hmm.
or block. We
Mm-hmm.
can find other people. So that's an incredible superpower. That gives us another ability to tap into the way we want to live and how we want to identify and how we want to express. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that what I've seen from 10 years of doing the and is that the last year or two, the people coming into the and doing the productions, they've seen so many of our videos for so many years
Yeah.
that their own ability to communicate and shape their relation, explore the relationship is so elevated. And they also have the card game. So they're practicing this at home, not practicing in terms of like exercise, but for fun and card
Mm-hmm.
games with their friends and with their partner. So that their ability to have conversations and explore the relationships and sit with emotions is that much more developed because of the project that we've been doing, because of what's, and so I think when you talk about young people now and what they're able to do, I think it's because they're able to find sources of information and other ways of expression that they couldn't find in their own physical proximity. And that's a
Mm-hmm.
beautiful thing.
It's so beautiful. I agree with you wholeheartedly. And what the best part too is, especially with people that you have coming in who are having these conversations and asking these questions, like you said, like if they're already doing that, the level of depth that you get from them only amplifies the level of depth of the receiver who's going to see that message. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like this incredibly beautiful, like conscious ability to live a way of living your life that the average person just doesn't understand. But the more vulnerability you allow yourself to have, you start to change the framework of the people who, you know, who are in your life and how they respond to you. And it's just incredible. It's this beautiful ripple effect. And I think
Yeah.
it's so powerful. And I want to ask you, I mean, I could talk to you all day long. I hope our paths cross again so we can have
Yeah.
another conversation like this. I
Great.
want to know, your link for your book is in the show notes below. I want to know, what is one thing that you want your reader to believe about themselves after reading your book? What is that one thing?
It's alluded to in the book and it's in there. The book is a look for the listeners listening. If they want to have an incredible conversation with the people that are important to them, buy the book, do the 12 questions, and on top of it, they're going to learn how to not just ride a bike, but how to build their own bikes, multiple bikes.
Hmm.
They'll learn how to ask really good questions and have great conversations with the people important to them. But the thing I really want to leave the reader with that is alluded to in the book is that ultimately the experiences that you're having in your life are uniquely shaping you to offer a gift to others. What is that gift?
Beautiful. My final question for you is, this is a question I've been asking 3 years on the podcast. Actually, probably more than, I think I'm like way
Yeah,
more years in than that, but I just feel like I'm stuck in, I don't, not even stuck, but I just
2 years.
like, I can't believe how fast the years go by. But anyways, this question is, what is one way my listener can create a little more happiness in their day, every day, starting today?
This is a big theme of the book, and that is that stop looking for answers. Put your energy in creating better questions. And I think this is really important. And I think it's really helpful because when you wake up in the morning and you go, oh shit, I got to do this today, or oh my God, I'm late to that, or whatever the thoughts that come up in the morning, what you don't realize is that that feeling, that thought is answering a question. We're always answering questions, but we take those questions for granted. If we reshape the question, we can reshape the question in a way that's more empowering, more constructive, and puts us in a better frame for living. What do I mean? If you're talking to your partner and you go, why do we fight so much? Why do we fight so much? Okay, well, then you're going to come through a list of things of why you fight so much. That's what your brain is built to do, is to answer questions. What if we change the question? What's our biggest challenge right now? And what do you think it's teaching us? Which is actually also in the book. Well, that reframes this conflict that we have, right? In a constructive way. You could ask a question, why do you think I'm in your life? The one I like to reference all the time is, something bad happens and you go, oh shit, why does this shit happen to me? Why does this shit happen to me? Well, let's improve that question. What's the gift in this shit?
Mm-hmm.
What do we make it be? Like, how is this the fertilizer for the person I'm going to become?
Mm-hmm.
That question versus why does this shit happen to me? Why does this shit happen to me? It's going to take you a downward spiral of maybe depression and just it's not empowering. How is this the fertilizer for who I'm going to become? Okay, I'm empowered. And I just think focusing on the question, not the answer, is what's imperative. Are you asking a question that is setting you up for more, that's constructive, that's empowering, that gives you more agency? So focus on the question, create better
Beautiful.
questions.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for your time today and for joining me on the podcast.
Thanks a lot. Take care, Simona.
Thank you. Thanks so much for tuning in to today's conversation on Happiness Happens. I hope you have a beautiful day today. Let us know what you loved from our conversation together. And remember that happiness happens when you're least expecting it.